The morning sun rose over Auckland like it did every other day. Children walked to school. Parents drove to work. Old men sat in parks and fed the birds. It was a Tuesday, and nobody in New Zealand had any reason to think it would be their last. 12 million people lived on those islands. They were farmers and teachers, doctors and shopkeepers. They lived quiet lives on a peaceful world. Earth had not seen war in over a century. The great nations had united long ago, and humanity had spread to the stars. But New Zealand remained what it had always been, a beautiful, green paradise at the edge of the world. Sarah was eating breakfast with her daughter when the sky changed color. The blue turned purple, then orange, then a shade of red she had never seen before. Her coffee cup stopped halfway to her lips. "Mommy," her daughter said, "what's happening to the sky?" Sarah never got the chance to answer. 3,000 light-years away, the Dominion had ruled their corner of the galaxy for 10,000 years. They were an ancient race with scales like emeralds and eyes like burning gold. They had conquered hundreds of worlds and crushed dozens of species beneath their feet. To them, the universe had a natural order. The strong ruled, the weak served, and humans were very, very weak. Or so they believed. The trouble had started 6 months earlier. A human colony ship had landed on a small moon called Seven. The colonists did not know that they considered this moon sacred. It was the burial place of their ancient kings. To the humans, it was just another rock with good soil and clean water. They built homes. They planted crops. They had no idea they had just signed their own death warrant. Archon Eth was the commander of the Third Fleet. He was old, proud, and filled with hatred for the younger races. When he heard about the human settlement on sacred ground, his blood boiled. "These insects dare to defile the tombs of our ancestors," he said to his council. "They must be taught their place." His advisors suggested a diplomatic solution. Perhaps the humans could be asked to leave. Perhaps compensation could be arranged. Eth laughed at them. "You do not ask insects to leave your home," he said. "You crush them." He chose his target carefully. He did not want to attack a major human world that might unite them against the Dominion. No, he wanted to send a message. He wanted to show humanity that they could be hurt, that they could be killed, and that there was nothing they could do about it. He chose New Zealand because it was small, because it was isolated, because 12 million deaths would hurt but not hurt enough to start a real war. He expected humanity to cry, to protest, to file complaints with the Galactic Council. He expected them to accept their place in the natural order. He was very, very wrong. The strike fleet arrived without warning. 400 warships dropped out of directly above the South Pacific. Their weapons were already charged. Their targets were already locked. The first beam hit Wellington at exactly 9:47 in the morning. The city did not burn. It simply ceased to exist. One moment there were buildings and streets and people. The next moment there was only glass and ash and silence. Auckland came next, then Christchurch, then every town, every village, every farm. They were thorough. Their sensors could detect human life signs, and they did not stop firing until every signal went dark. It took 6 hours. The rest of the world watched in horror. Satellites captured the destruction in perfect detail. News networks broadcast the footage on every screen on every human world. Billions of people saw their brothers and sisters burning. When it was done, Archon Eth appeared on every human communication channel. His scaled face filled the screens, his golden eyes burning with contempt. "Know your place, humans," he said. "This was a lesson. Your colony on Seven has been removed. Your people on these islands have paid the price for your arrogance. Do not test us again. Next time it will be a continent." The transmission ended. The fleet jumped back to, and 12 million people were gone. For a long moment humanity was silent. The shock was too great. The loss was too sudden. Mothers who had kissed their children goodbye that morning would never see them again. Husbands who had left for work would never come home. Entire families, entire communities, entire cities erased in the time it took to eat lunch. Then the silence broke. It started as a whisper, a low sound that spread from home to home, from city to city, from world to world. It grew louder. It grew stronger. It became a roar that shook the foundations of human civilization. It was rage. The United Terran Assembly met within hours. Representatives from every human world gathered in the Great Chamber on Mars. Their faces were wet with tears. Their hands were shaking with fury. The speaker stood at the podium and looked out at the assembled leaders of humanity. "They have murdered 12 million of our people," she said. Her voice was steady, but her eyes were fire. "They have done this without warning, without provocation, without mercy. They have told us to know our place." She paused. The chamber was silent. "I say we show them theirs." The vote was taken. It was unanimous. Every single representative from Earth to the furthest colony voted the same way. Total war. The news spread across human space like wildfire. On every world, in every city, people heard the decision. And they did not weep. They did not protest. They did not beg for peace. They smiled. Because the galaxy did not know humans. Not really. They saw a young species, barely 3 centuries old in space. They saw merchants and explorers, scientists and diplomats. They saw a people who talked about peace and cooperation, who built hospitals instead of weapons, who preferred trade to conquest. They did not see what lay beneath. Humanity had been born in blood. Their history was written in war. They had fought each other for thousands of years, perfecting the art of killing until they nearly destroyed themselves. They had learned, eventually, to turn that violence inward, to channel it, to control it, to hide it behind smiles and handshakes. But they had never forgotten how to use it. Now, for the first time in centuries, humanity had a target for their rage. The monster that slept inside them was waking up, and the Dominion had no idea what they had just unleashed. In a small apartment on Mars, Admiral Helena Vance sat alone in the darkness. In her hand, she held a photograph of a young woman with bright eyes and a brighter smile. Her daughter, her only child, a marine biologist who had moved to Auckland to study the coral reefs. Helena had tried to call her when the attack began. The call never connected. She looked at the photograph for a long time. Then she put it in her pocket, stood up, and walked to the door. She had work to do. The galaxy thought it knew humanity. It was wrong. For 300 years, humans had walked among the stars with friendly smiles and open hands. They traded with every species. They built hospitals on poor worlds. They sent aid to disaster zones and refugees to safe harbors. They talked endlessly about peace, about cooperation, about the family of sentient beings. The other species saw this and thought humans were soft, weak, harmless. They called them the merchants. They called them the healers. They called them the fools. None of them had ever wondered why humans smiled so much. None of them had ever asked what humans were hiding behind those smiles. The answer was simple: 60,000 warships. Admiral Helena Vance stood on the bridge of the TSS Retribution, the largest battleship ever built by human hands. It was 3 kilometers long, bristling with weapons that could crack a planet in half. And it was just one ship among many. The Mars shipyard stretched across the red planet's orbit like a metal spider web. Thousands of construction platforms hung in the void, each one building ships day and night. The humans had been building for centuries, quietly, secretly, always preparing for the day when someone would try to hurt them. That day had come. "Status report," Helena said. Her voice was calm, but her officers knew better than to be fooled. They had seen the look in her eyes when she came aboard. They knew about Auckland. They knew about her daughter. "The First Fleet is assembled and ready, Admiral," her executive officer replied. 12,000 warships, including 800 heavy battleships. The Second Fleet will be ready in 3 days. The third and fourth fleets are mobilizing from the outer colonies, and the reserve fleets being activated as we speak. Final count is projected at 62,000 combat-ready vessels. Helena nodded. 62,000. The number would have seemed impossible to any other species. They, with their ancient empire and countless worlds, could field perhaps 8,000 warships. The other great powers were similar. No one had ever imagined that the friendly, peaceful humans had been building an armada that could conquer the galaxy. But humans did not think like other species. They did not build for conquest. They built for survival. They remembered their own history, the wars, the genocides, the atomic fires that had nearly ended their civilization. They knew that the universe was vast and dark and full of dangers, and they had decided long ago that they would never be victims again. Now someone had made them victims, and they were very, very angry. The mobilization was unlike anything the galaxy had ever seen. On every human world, factories that had been making farming equipment started making weapons. Cargo ships that had been hauling grain were refitted with armor and guns. Young men and women lined up at recruitment centers, so many that they had to be turned away. This was not a government ordering its people to war. This was a species rising as one. On Titan, the great forge moons came alive. These artificial worlds had been built centuries ago, designed to produce warships in case of emergency. They had been dormant for so long that most humans had forgotten they existed. Now their engines roared to life, and new ships began sliding off their assembly lines at a rate of 10 per day. On Luna, the Fleet Command Center became a hive of activity. Officers who had spent their careers running peaceful patrols were now planning invasion routes. Maps of space covered every wall. Intelligence reports were analyzed, weaknesses were identified, targets were selected. In the asteroid belt, hidden bases opened their doors. These secret installations had been carved into rocks and moons across the solar system, invisible to outside sensors. They held weapons that humanity had built but hoped never to use: planet crackers, sun killers, devices that could end civilizations with a single shot. Helena looked at the reports and felt something cold settle in her chest. She had hoped once that humanity would never need these weapons. She had believed that the universe could be a peaceful place if everyone just tried hard enough. Her daughter had believed that too. "Admiral," her communications officer said, "we have an incoming message from the Galactic Council." Helena turned to a blue-skinned face appeared, ambassador of the current council speaker. Admiral Vance said, "The Galactic Council urges restraint. We understand that humanity has suffered a terrible tragedy, but war is not the answer. Let us mediate. Let us find a peaceful solution." Helena stared at the ambassador for a long moment. When she spoke, her voice was quiet. "Ambassador, do you know what they did?" "We have seen the reports." "No, you have read the reports. You have not seen. You have not smelled the ashes. You have not heard the silence where 12 million voices used to be." "Admiral, please." "The murdered 12 million people because we accidentally built houses on a moon they consider holy. They did not warn us. They did not ask us to leave. They simply killed everyone. Men, women, children, bobbies, they killed them all." His face was pale. "We condemn this action in the strongest terms." "Your condemnation means nothing." Helena leaned forward. "They think we are weak. They think they can kill our people and face no consequences. They are wrong. We are coming for them, and when we are done, the galaxy will understand something very important." "What is that?" "You can trade with humans. You can be friends with humans. You can even insult humans and we will smile and shake your hand. But if you murder our civilians, if you slaughter our innocents, we will burn everything you have ever built. We will break everything you have ever loved. We will make your name a warning that echoes through history." She paused, her eyes burning into the screen. "Tell the council to stay out of our way. This is not their war, But if anyone helps it will become their war too. The transmission ended. Helena turned back to her officers. They were staring at her with a mixture of fear and pride. She understood both emotions. She felt them herself. "How long until all fleets are assembled?" she asked. 18 days, Admiral." "Too long, make it 12. "Yes, Admiral." She walked to the viewport and looked out at the gathering fleet. Ships were arriving every hour, battleships, carriers, destroyers, cruisers. They came from every corner of human space, united by grief and rage and a terrible purpose. In her pocket, she touched the photograph of her daughter. She remembered the day it was taken, graduation from university, her smile bright as the sun, her whole life ahead of her. That life was gone now, burned away by alien weapons while she ate breakfast. Helena closed her eyes. "We're coming," she whispered. "I promise." 3 weeks later, the Terran Retribution fleet departed for space. 60,000 warships moved as one, their engines lighting up the darkness like a river of stars. The galaxy had never seen anything like it. Watching species sent reports back to there, describing the endless tide of human vessels. Some felt fear, some felt awe. All of them understood that something had changed. Humanity was no longer hiding. The monster was awake, and it was hungry. On the bridge of the Eternal Dominance, Archon Eth received the reports of the human mobilization. At first he laughed. Humans were soft creatures. They would make noise, file complaints, perhaps send a few hundred ships as a show of force. The Dominion would crush them easily. Then the numbers came in. 60,000. Eth read the report 3 times. He called his intelligence officers and demanded they verify the count. They did. The number was accurate. For the first time in his long life, Eth felt something he had never felt before. Fear. The first border fortress fell in 47 minutes. Commander L had served the Dominion for 60 years. He had fought in a dozen wars and crushed countless rebellions. His fortress was built into an asteroid the size of a moon, armed with weapons that could destroy entire fleets. He had 300 warships under his command and 10,000 veteran soldiers. He thought he was ready for the humans. He was not. The human fleet dropped out of like a swarm of angry insects. L's sensors screamed warnings at him. Too many contacts, too many targets, too many weapons locking onto his position. He tried to count the enemy ships. He stopped counting after 20,000. "Open fire," he screamed. "All batteries open fire." His fortress launched everything it had. Missiles, beams, plasma bolts. A storm of destruction that should have shattered any attacking fleet. But the humans kept coming. Their ships absorbed the fire, returned it tenfold, and pushed forward without slowing down. The warships lasted slightly longer than the fortress. They fought bravely, desperately, knowing that there was nowhere to run. Human weapons tore through their shields like paper. Human missiles tracked them with terrible accuracy. Human fighters swarmed around them like angry wasps. When it was over, Commander L floated in an escape pod, watching the burning wreckage of everything he had commanded. A human destroyer pulled alongside and transported him aboard. He expected to be tortured. He expected to be killed. Instead, a human officer gave him food and water and a warm blanket. "We don't hurt prisoners," the officer said. "We're not you." That was the pattern of the war. The humans destroyed everything military. They broke every fortress, sank every warship, bombed every weapons factory. But they did not touch civilians. They did not glass cities or murder innocents. They were methodical, precise, and utterly without mercy towards soldiers, but they left the common people alone. This confused them more than anything else. Admiral Helena Vance had given strict orders on the first day of the campaign. Her words were broadcast to every ship in the fleet. "We are here to punish those who murdered our people," she said. "We are not here to become them. Every civilian death dishonors the memory of New Zealand. Every innocent we kill makes us no better than the monsters who burned Auckland. We will destroy their military. We will break their power, but we will not slaughter their children to do it. Some officers disagreed. They wanted revenge, pure and simple. They wanted to make them feel the same pain that humanity had felt. Helena understood this feeling. She felt it herself every time she looked at her daughter's photograph. But she knew something that the angry ones did not. She knew that humanity was better than this. She knew that if they became monsters, they would never be able to look at themselves again. So the fleet advanced and it destroyed, but it did not massacre. And somehow that made it more terrifying. They had expected rage. They had expected madness. They had expected humans to charge blindly into battle, driven by emotion and easily defeated. Instead, they faced something far worse. They faced cold, professional death. The humans did not hurry. They studied each target carefully. They identified weaknesses. They attacked with overwhelming force at the perfect moment. They wasted nothing. They lost almost nothing. They simply advanced system by system, breaking everything in their path. Within 3 months, half of space was under human control. Archon Eth watched the reports come in from his command center on Prime. Each day brought news of another fortress fallen, another fleet destroyed, another system conquered. His once mighty empire was crumbling like sand in a storm. He had tried to rally his allies. The Dominion had treaties with a dozen species, mutual defense pacts that should have brought thousands of ships to his aid. But when he called on them, he received the same answer from each one. "We are sorry, Archon, we cannot help you." The humans had sent messages to every ally. The messages were simple and direct. "This is not your war. You did not attack New Zealand. You did not murder 12 million innocents. We have no quarrel with you. Stay neutral and you will not be harmed. Interfere and we will come for you next." One by one, the allies had abandoned them. Some were afraid of the human fleet. Others were secretly glad to see the Dominion humbled. A few even offered to help the humans, though Helena refused. "We don't need help," she said. "We don't want help. This is our fight, our justice, our vengeance." By the 6th month, the Navy existed only on paper. Their shipyards were burning wreckage. Their admirals were dead or captured. Their soldiers were scattered and demoralized. The Great Dominion, which had ruled for 10,000 years, was being dismantled by a species that had been traveling the stars for barely 3 centuries. Journalists from neutral species had embedded with the human fleet, broadcasting the war to the entire galaxy. Billions of beings watched the humans advance, and they struggled to understand what they were seeing. These were the same humans who ran hospitals and trade routes. These were the same humans who talked about peace and friendship. These were the same humans who smiled at everyone and seemed to have no enemies. Now they were destroying an empire without breaking a sweat. One journalist, a named Seven, managed to interview Admiral Vance aboard the Retribution. The interview was broadcast across the galaxy. Admiral Seven asked, "How do you explain this transformation? Humanity has always been peaceful. Where did this monster come from?" Helena looked at the journalist for a long moment before answering. "We were never peaceful," she said quietly. "We just chose peace. There's a difference." "I don't understand." "Humanity has been at war with itself since the beginning of our history. We have killed more of our own kind than all other species combined have killed of each other. We have committed genocides, dropped atomic bombs, invented weapons that could end all life on our planet. We looked into the darkness and saw ourselves staring back." She paused, her eyes distant. 300 years ago, we decided to change. We put away our weapons. We focused on exploration and trade. We built instead of destroyed. We chose to be better than we were. But we never forgot what we are capable of. We never lost the skills we developed over thousands of years of killing each other. So when they attacked, they woke up the thing we had put to sleep. They reminded us what we are, and now they are paying the price. Seven's next question was barely a whisper. Will you stop? After you've beaten them, will you return to peace? Helena looked at the photograph in her hand. Her daughter's smile stared back at her. I hope so, she said. I really hope so. The fleet continued its advance. System after system fell. They fought where they could, fled where they could not, and died by the millions. But the humans took no joy in the killing. They did what they had come to do, nothing more, nothing less. After 18 months of constant war, the Terran Retribution fleet arrived at the edge of the system. They lay before them, a beautiful blue and green planet, home to 8 billion souls. Helena stood on the bridge of the Retribution and looked at the planet on her. This was the heart of the Dominion. This was where Eth had sent his orders. This was where the decision to burn New Zealand had been made. Admiral, her executive officer said, the orbital defense grid is powering up. Their remaining fleet is forming a defensive line. They have approximately 2,000 ships. Helena nodded, 2,000 against 60,000. It was not even a battle, it was an execution. Send one final transmission to the Archon, she said. Tell him he has 24 hours to surrender unconditionally. If he refuses, we will come in and take him. The message was sent, the clock started. And the galaxy held its breath. The 24 hours passed in silence. On Prime, 8 billion waited to learn their fate. They had watched the war unfold on their screens. They had seen their mighty fleets reduced to scrap metal. They had heard the stories from survivors, tales of human ships that seemed endless, human weapons that could not be stopped, human soldiers who fought with cold efficiency. Now the humans were here, and they were afraid. Archon Eth sat in his command chamber, surrounded by his generals and advisors. They had argued for hours about what to do. Some wanted to surrender. Others wanted to fight to the death. A few suggested negotiations, hoping to salvage something from the ruins of their empire. Eth listened to them all, but he had already made his decision. We will not surrender, he said finally. The Dominion has stood for 10,000 years. We have never bowed to anyone. We will not bow to these mammals. But Archon, one of his generals, protested. We cannot win. They have 60,000 ships. We have 2,000. The mathematics are clear. Then we will die with honor. And the civilians, the 8 billion people on this planet. Eth's golden eyes narrowed. The humans will not harm civilians. They have proven this throughout the war. They are soft, weak. They lack the stomach for true violence. They destroyed our entire military in 18 months. But they did not glass a single civilian world. They do not have the courage to kill innocents. That is their weakness. We will use it against them. His plan was simple. The fleet would fight to the last ship. The orbital defense grid would fire until it was destroyed. And through it all, the civilian population would serve as a shield. The humans would not bombard the planet while innocents lived there. Eventually, they would have to negotiate. They would have to give the Dominion terms. It was not a good plan, but it was the only one Eth had. The deadline passed. Admiral Helena Vance appeared on every screen in the system. Archon Eth, she said, you have refused our offer of surrender. You have chosen to continue this war, so be it. We are coming. The human fleet moved forward. The Battle of Prime lasted 6 hours. Military historians would later call it the most one-sided engagement in galactic history. It was not a battle, it was a demonstration. They fought bravely. Their ships threw themselves at the human lines, firing everything they had. Their orbital platforms launched missiles by the thousand. Their ground-based weapons reached into space, trying to knock down the incoming invaders. None of it mattered. The human fleet split into 1,000 pieces, each one moving with perfect coordination. Destroyers swept aside the screening ships. Battleships engaged the main fleet head-on, their superior weapons tearing through armor. Carriers launched fighters that swarmed the orbital platforms, picking them apart piece by piece. Helena watched the battle from the bridge of the Retribution. She felt no joy in the destruction. She felt no satisfaction in the deaths. She only felt tired, tired of war, tired of killing, tired of the weight that had settled on her shoulders 18 months ago and had never lifted. "Admiral," her censor officer reported, "the flagship is attempting to retreat to the planet's surface. They appear to be heading for the capital city." "Don't let them. I want Eth alive." 3 destroyers broke from the main fleet and pursued the Eternal Dominance. They caught it before it could reach the atmosphere, crippling its engines with precise shots. The flagship drifted, helpless, as human boarding pods attached to its hull. The Marines who boarded the ship were the best humanity had. They moved through the corridors like ghosts, clearing room after room with brutal efficiency. Soldiers tried to stop them. They failed. Captain led the assault team that reached the bridge. He kicked down the final door and found Archon Eth standing alone, a weapon in his hand. "You will not take me alive," Eth said. His voice was steady, but his hands were shaking. "I am the Archon of the Dominion. I do not surrender to lesser species." Looked at the Archon. He thought about New Zealand. He thought about the 12 million dead. He thought about his own cousin, who had been studying in Wellington when the sky turned red. He wanted to kill this creature. He wanted to make him suffer. He wanted to hurt him the way humanity had been hurt. Instead, he lowered his weapon. "You don't get to choose death," said quietly. "You don't get to escape what you did. You're coming with us, Archon. You're going to stand trial. You're going to face the families of everyone you murdered. And then you're going to spend the rest of your very long life remembering their faces." Eth's eyes widened. "You would not dare." Moved before the Archon could finish speaking. 3 quick strikes, and Eth was on the ground, unconscious. The Marines secured him and called for extraction. "Target captured," reported. "The Archon is ours." Above Prime, the battle was ending. The fleet was gone. The orbital platforms were destroyed or captured. The defense grid was silent. 60,000 human warships hung in the sky like a funeral shroud. The planet below waited for death. Helena Vance looked at the beautiful blue and green world that had spawned an empire of monsters. She thought about what Eth had done. She thought about what he deserved. She thought about justice and vengeance and the difference between them. Her finger hovered over a button. One press and the bombardment would begin. One press and 8 billion would burn. One press and humanity would have its revenge. She thought about her daughter. She thought about Smile, her laugh, her dream of studying the oceans and protecting their creatures. Had dedicated her life to saving living things. She had believed that all life was precious. Would want this? Would she want 8 billion dead in her name? Helena knew the answer. She pulled her hand back. "All ships," she said, "hold position. There will be no bombardment. Repeat, no bombardment." Her officers stared at her. "Admiral," her executive officer asked carefully, "the planet is defenseless. We could end this now. We could make sure the Dominion never threatens anyone again. By killing 8 billion innocents. By murdering children who had nothing to do with New Zealand. They would have done the same to us." "Yes, they would have. That's why we're better than them." Helena turned to face her crew. These men and women had fought beside her for 18 months. They had lost friends and comrades. They had every reason to want revenge. "I know what you're feeling," she said. "I feel it too. Every day I think about what they did to our people. Every night I dream about Auckland burning. But if we glass this planet, we become them. We become the monsters who kill innocents because we have the power to do it." She paused, letting the words sink in. "We came here for justice. We came here to show the galaxy that humanity will not be attacked without consequence. We have done that. Their military is gone. Their empire is broken. Their leader is in chains. We have won. But the hatred, Admiral, how do we answer the hatred?" Helena looked out at the 8 billion souls waiting to die. We answer it by proving that we're better than they think we are. We answer it by showing mercy when we have every right to show none. We answer it by being the species we want to be, not the species our enemies believe us to be. She stood straight, her voice firm. No bombardment, no genocide. We will occupy this system. We will disarm this planet. We will rebuild and reform and make sure this never happens again. But we will not become the thing we came here to destroy. The bridge was silent. Then slowly, her executive officer nodded. Understood, Admiral, no bombardment. The order went out to the fleet. 60,000 ships powered down their main weapons. The apocalypse that had seemed inevitable moments ago faded away. On Prime, 8 billion looked up at the sky and wept with relief. They had expected death. They had received mercy. And they would never forget it. 3 days after the Battle of Prime, Admiral Helena Vance walked through the streets of the capital. She walked alone, without guards, without weapons. Her officers had begged her not to do this. They had warned her about assassins, about ambushes, about the millions of who hated humanity. She had listened to their warnings, thanked them for their concern, and walked out anyway. The streets were empty. They had retreated into their homes, watching from behind closed windows as the human admiral passed by. They expected soldiers. They expected tanks and weapons and the heavy boot of occupation. Instead, they saw one woman walking alone in the morning light. Helena reached the steps of the High Council chamber. This was where the leaders of the Dominion had made their decisions for 10,000 years. This was where Eth had ordered the destruction of New Zealand. This was the heart of everything she had come to destroy. She climbed the steps slowly. At the top, the massive doors stood open. Inside, she could see the council members assembled, the surviving leaders of the people. They were waiting for her. She entered the chamber. The room was vast, designed to make visitors feel small and powerless. The council sat on high platforms, looking down at whoever stood before them. For 10,000 years, other species had come here to beg for mercy, to negotiate trade deals, to ask permission to exist in Dominion space. Helena did not feel small. She climbed onto the speaker's platform and looked up at the assembled. Her face was calm. Her voice was steady. 20 months ago, she began, your Archon gave an order. He sent 400 warships to Mai. He told them to kill everyone in a country called New Zealand. 12 million people died that day. Men, women, children, bobbies. They burned in their homes, in their schools, in their hospitals. They died because your leader wanted to teach us a lesson. She paused, letting the silence fill the room. We have learned our lesson. The council members shifted nervously on their platforms. But perhaps not the lesson Eth intended. We learned that the galaxy is not safe. We learned that ancient empires will murder innocents without warning or mercy. We learned that power without conscience is the most dangerous thing in the universe. Helena reached into her pocket and pulled out a photograph. She held it up so everyone could see, a young woman with bright eyes and a brighter smile. This was my daughter. Her name was. She was a marine biologist. She loved the ocean. She loved the creatures that lived in it. She spent her life trying to protect them, trying to understand them, trying to make sure future generations would see the same beautiful things she saw. Her voice cracked slightly, but she continued. Was in Auckland when your ships came. She was eating breakfast. She was probably thinking about her research, about the coral reefs she was studying, about the fish she had named and the discoveries she hoped to make. And then she was gone, burned to ash in the time it takes to draw a breath. Helena put the photograph back in her pocket. I could have destroyed your world. I could have killed every one of your 8 billion people. My officers wanted it. My soldiers wanted it. The families of New Zealand wanted it. For 20 months I carried the weight of that decision. I looked at you and thought about pressing a button. One button and your species would have joined in the ashes. But I did not press it. Do you want to know why? The council was silent. Because would not have wanted it. Because the 12 million dead would not have wanted it. Because humanity is better than you think we are. Because killing innocents to avenge innocence does not bring justice. It only creates more victims. She spread her hands, gesturing at the chamber around her. Your military is gone. Your empire is over. Your archon is in chains. You have lost everything you built over 10,000 years, but your people are alive. Your children will grow up. Your civilization will continue. Not because you deserved mercy, but because we chose to give it. Helena looked directly into the broadcast drones that hovered around the chamber. She knew that her words were being transmitted across the galaxy. Every species, every world, every being with access to a screen was watching. Let this be a message to everyone listening. Humanity does not want war. We do not seek conquest. We do not dream of empire. We want to trade and explore and build. We want to be your friends, your partners, your allies. Her voice hardened. But if you attack our civilians, we will come for you. If you murder our innocents, we will destroy everything you have built. If you burn our homes, we will darken your skis with warships. We are the species that nearly destroyed itself 100 times over. We have more experience with war than any other beings in the galaxy, and if you force us to use that experience, you will not survive. She paused, her eyes like ice. We do not want to be monsters, but we are very, very good at it when we have to be. The chamber was absolutely silent. The council members stared at her, their scales pale with fear. You will now accept our terms. Your military will be permanently limited. Your weapons research will be monitored. You will pay reparations to New Zealand for 10 generations, schools, hospitals, parks. Everything that was destroyed will be rebuilt 1,000 times over. You will erect memorials on every world you control, so that no one ever forgets what you did and why you were punished. Helena folded her arms. And if you ever attack human civilians again, we will not show mercy a second time. Remember that. Teach it to your children. Write it in your histories. Humanity forgives, but humanity never forgets. She turned and walked out of the chamber, leaving the shattered council behind her. The aftermath of the war transformed the galaxy. The Dominion was formally dissolved. Its member worlds were given independence. Its military was reduced to a small defensive force. Its leaders were tried for war crimes in courts that broadcast their verdicts across the stars. Archon Eth received a unique sentence. He was not executed. He was not imprisoned in the usual sense. Instead, he was placed in a small room with a screen, and every day for the rest of his life, he was required to read the name and biography of one person he had killed. 12 million names. At one per day, it would take him over 30,000 years. He lived another 40 years, reading names every morning. The weight of it broke him long before his body failed. In the end, he died weeping, surrounded by the ghosts of Auckland and Wellington and every small town he had burned. On Earth, New Zealand was rebuilt. The scars in the landscape were turned into memorial gardens. The names of the dead were carved into walls of black stone that stretched for miles. Every year, people from across human space came to walk among the names and remember. Helena Vance retired from the military. She bought a small house near the memorial in Auckland, where she could see her daughter's name carved in stone. She spent her days tending a garden, growing the flowers that had loved. Sometimes journalists came to interview her. They asked about the war, about her decisions, about mercy and vengeance and justice. She answered their questions politely, but she never enjoyed it. One day, a young student came to her door. He had traveled across the galaxy to meet her. His name was X, and he was studying human history. "Admiral Vance," he said, his voice trembling, "I wanted to thank you." Helena looked at him with surprise. "Thank me for what?" "For not destroying my world, for showing mercy when you had every right to show none. My parents were on Prime when your fleet arrived. They were certain they were going to die. They prayed to their ancestors for a miracle." He paused, his golden eyes glistening. "You were that miracle." Helena was quiet for a long moment. Then she smiled, the first real smile she had managed in years. "Would you like to come in?" she asked. "I just made tea." They sat in her garden for hours, talking about history and memory and the strange paths that bring enemies together as friends. When X left, he carried with him a small gift, a cutting from one of Helena's flowers, a piece of earth to plant on a world. The galaxy had learned a new phrase in the years since the war. It was whispered in bars and boardrooms, taught in schools and military academies, spoken with a mixture of fear and respect. "Do not anger the humans." But there was another phrase, less known but equally important. It was spoken by those who remembered not just humanity's strength, but humanity's choice. The humans could have been monsters. They chose to be better. And in the rebuilt cities of New Zealand, where children laughed and flowers bloomed, humanity proved the most terrifying truth of all. They were capable of ending worlds. They preferred to build them. That was the real message. That was the real lesson. That was the thing that echoed through the galaxy long after the warships were gone and the fires were cold. Humanity was not to be feared because of their weapons. They were to be feared because of their restraint. And that made all the difference.